All right, we are live. We're as live as we can be right now, considering all the finagling we had to do to get this esteemed guest with us today. This is the SCM podcast. The SCM stands for Squared Circle Maniacs. That's our handle on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, on Totem Pole Nation. And we're coming to you through the magic of the internet with the esteemed writer of the book Nitro, that we're all big fans of, Mr. Guy Evans. I'll introduce these other two gentlemen next to me. Guy, Motorhead is in the top right corner. Motorhead 711, and you know him, you love him. He's Orange Cassidy's biggest fan, Don Wayne, the Duke of Virginia, Don Wayne. Mr. Evans, how are you?
I'm doing great, guys. I can promise you, for people listening to this, the book is better than my technical skills, so I apologize for that. But hopefully you can hear me.
You sound fantastic, and you're looking, and you look fantastic too. So
well, you guys too, and nice to meet you guys, and I really appreciate the invite.
Where are you broadcasting from, Guy? If you don't mind me asking.
I'm actually in Tampa, so I'm in Florida. Despite the accent, that may throw you off a little bit. I'm from the UK originally, but live in Florida.
Okay. And I see that you've written 2 books in your career. You've written Grateful, I believe it is?
Yeah,
Eric
that's
Bischoff
right.
book. That's your latest one. And you started with Nitro. So there's a recurring wrestling theme in these two books. Is the next book going to be wrestling related?
It probably is, actually. When I embarked on writing the Nitro book, I thought that would probably be my one foray into the world of professional wrestling, and I really didn't anticipate the book to have the impact that it has, both with regard to how it's kind of recognized from people both in and outside of the industry. It's something that continues to surprise me, and of course the success of that book led to working with Eric Bischoff on his second book, Grateful, as you mentioned there. And once that book came out, some other people kind of came out of the woodwork and said, hey, I'd like to work with you as well. So, I guess the joke's on me because I thought it was a one and done, but it's kind of turned into something else at this point, which I'm very grateful for, actually, myself.
Well, I'll tell you this much, Guy. You've gotten exactly 2 copies of me out of buying it, because I bought the hard copy when it first came out, and then when I heard we might be able to get you for a guest, I went to Amazon and said, well, looks like I'm doing the audiobook because I cannot cover this 600-page fascinating read again in my spare time. I'm going to have to buy the man's book again, so you got your money's worth out of me, buddy. I can tell you that much.
Well, I appreciate that.
It's funny how things work out that way, doesn't it? A few extra coppers in the old box there. So
you mentioned the wrestling. You weren't planning on doing it. How did you end up writing such an intense book on the wrestling business? Because you could have taken a softball and covered somebody's life and done hearsay, but you took on one of the biggest debated subjects in all of wrestling, which was the downfall of WCW. And I know Eric Bischoff puts over the book all the time. He praises you constantly. He buries some of these other books that are out there. This one is the one that he says is the go-to, that if you actually want to hear the in-depth business of it. How did you decide this is going to be your first major tackle? Because I can't even imagine that undertaking.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I appreciate all the kind words that you guys have to say about the book. Really, it came from a place of genuine curiosity. So, as I mentioned, I grew up on the other side of the pond, but even for us in the UK, wrestling was a huge thing in the mid to late 90s. I was someone who followed both companies very closely and watched every single show and all the pay-per-views and all that kind of stuff. And the same could be said for my peer group, my friendship group at the time. And once WCW went away, that was really kind of, I suppose, the extent of my interest in wrestling for quite some time. But I always had these thoughts in the back of my head related to what actually happened to WCW. It went from this huge cultural phenomenon, and then in the space of 2 or 3 years, it goes to a place of non-existence. And so I suppose it was probably about 7 or 8 or 9 years that I was out of it after WCW went away. And as I know a lot of people who have interest in wrestling do, you find a way of kind of coming back to it at some point and maybe reliving some of those old memories. And it was at that point, around 2010 or so, I started to dig into some of the existing accounts at that time of the WCW story, the various books and autobiographies and documentaries and so on that had been produced. And as someone who followed the story so closely back then, I found them all to be entertaining and informative in their own right. But I thought there's actually a lot of questions that still haven't been answered here. And there's some things here that aren't really adding up. And there are these shadowy figures that we hear a lot from in these WWE produced documentaries, for example, the Jamie Kellners or the Harvey Schillers, people of that ilk. But we never actually get to hear from these people. And I thought that was pretty curious. And so I suppose I waited about 3 or 4 years for someone to come along and do the kind of book that I wanted to read, as someone who was a fan back then. And to make a long story short, no one ever did. So around late 2014, early 2015, I said, you know what, I'm going to have a shot at this, not knowing that would then turn into a 3.5-year project and a 600-page book, as you mentioned. So it was something that really took on a life of its own. But that's really how it got started, was just genuine curiosity. There's some questions out there that haven't been answered, and I'd like to find an answer for them.
Ryan, who was the first person you reached out to? Who was the very first person you thought of to get a hold of?
Eric Bischoff would have been one of the first, certainly, because clearly this book could not have been written without his input. And so I'm very, grateful, again, to use that word for that, because he didn't have to give me any time. I think he gave me about 4.5 hours over the course of a couple of days. And
Nice.
if you imagine this book where he's constantly being referenced and people are talking about him, but you never actually get his side of the argument, it would have really limited the effectiveness of the book. So he would have been one of the first. But I remember the first person I interviewed is someone who's certainly not a household name, and it's kind of random in retrospect. It was a guy by the name of Rob Garner, who was one of the VPs at WCW, and he was actually employed with the company for essentially its entire run under Turner, maybe minus a couple of years or so. But I remember once I spoke to him, that kind of gave me the confidence that, there's actually a lot more to this story than even I had considered as a fan going in. And I think this is going to be something that's truly unique, because just the things that came out of that interview kind of got me in the mode to start writing and learning more. But that's how it all got started.
All right.
That was a good question, because I did have a follow-up to that. Is, I in the book, Kevin Sullivan seemed to be pretty open with you. DDP was a very quotable source that I saw you had. There were a few others in there, but so who are the guys that were really easy to work with as far as getting information out of them, and who were some of the guys that you found just didn't want to talk to you about the book? Because I noticed, I'm not going to name names, but I noticed there were some very big characters in wrestling at that time that seemed to not get mentioned in this book.
Well, you know what? I'd have to say, in thinking back on it, any resistance that I got tended to come from people more on the Turner side. And I'm not saying that as a blanket statement, because if you look at the book, which really, the book is really about, in my mind, this dysfunctional relationship between WCW and its parent company. That's kind of the driving theme of the book, I would say. And of course, all of the major beats and moments are covered along the way with regards to the Nitro era, but that's really the story that's being told, I think. Hence, the title of the book, The Incredible Rise, but the inevitable collapse of Ted Turner's WCW. A lot of that has to do with what was going on between TBS, Inc. and WCW. So the people who may not have been incredibly enthusiastic about talking about this wrestling company tended to be some of the more high-profile people at times, although that wasn't always the case in the TBS hierarchy. I've mentioned this story before. I think Eric and I talked about it once on a podcast where I remember speaking to a very, sort of high-ranking Turner executive about this subject, and he said, yeah, I really don't want to talk about this wrestling stuff. It was 15, 20 years ago. I didn't like it then. I don't like it now. It's kind of an embarrassment, to be associated with it. And he's like, look, no one at my level sat around and talked about Diamond Dallas Page or Buff Bagwell or Scott Steiner or Conan or Goldberg. And he started naming half the roster. But prior to that, he was painting a picture to me that he was above all of this, and this was this silly little wrestling company, and I was concerned with the other programming on TNT and TBS. And then he literally, in the course of that conversation, probably rattled off 15 or 20 names, and I thought, Yeah, it's kind of interesting that you'd remember Buff Bagwell 15 years after the fact. Maybe there's maybe you're kind of a closet wrestling fan or something.
Exactly.
So,
They're everywhere, guys.
That was interesting.
Yeah. Those closet wrestling fans, man, they're all over the place. They never like to admit it, but every now and then you'll catch them slipping, and that's a good one. That's a good way to catch them. You mentioned, though, that, just now you said the TBS and the Turner executives were hard, they were hard to approach at times. How in the world did you manage to get all of those inner office memos and memorandums and executive orders? The stuff that I read in this book about you pulling that information out, that looked like some CIA top agent secretive gets that you had, man. I can't imagine that anybody was just holding on to this information. I can't imagine the type of research you had to do to find this.
Well, I'll give you one example. There was someone that I spoke to for the book who, again, worked on the Turner side, but this was someone who was very helpful as a source to me, and I think got a sense early on that hopefully I was approaching the project from a place of integrity and genuine curiosity, as I mentioned before. Prior to doing the book, I didn't have any association with anyone who worked in the wrestling business or the TV business or anything of that sort. So it wasn't like I was going in trying to settle some scores or push an agenda. And this particular person, we did an interview, and I think they liked the approach that I was taking. And so we ended up following up that interview with a series of conversations and staying in touch and text messages and emails as the months and years went on. And after a period of time, they said to me casually one day, I have some stuff in the attic that I've kept from back then, some documents and notes and folders and stuff like that. I haven't looked at it in a while, and that might maybe of use to you. Now, what you need to understand is everyone says that. Everyone says that. If you ask them about, hey, can you give me some specifics on a particular situation? A lot of people, their default answer will be, yeah, let me check my notes. Let me go back through my old folders. I'll find something for you. But this particular person had some documents that go back, 25 years. Now, what I got from that particular person, I'm only kind of using them as one example, probably comprises about 5% of the documents that you mentioned that ended up in the book. So they were by no means unique in that regard. Some of the methodology or the means that had to be taken to get some of that stuff I probably can't talk about. I'll leave that kind of in the realm of mystery.
That's awesome.
Yes. I think that's kind of what gives credibility to the book is, hey, let's be honest, although we have the utmost respect and admiration for so many of these people in the wrestling business, by default they are workers, so they do like to sometimes spin a yarn. Spin a yarn, there you go. And so being able to cross-reference what they were saying with some of those documents was really invaluable, I think, to me.
And I'm so glad you said that, because something that I caught in your book that sort of caught my eye about wrestlers, and you never know when they're, so to speak, working or they're being honest with you. In the book, you talk about how Kevin Sullivan was credited with doing a lot of the booking on the show. And then you also hear Eric Bischoff say, well, I'm taking credit for the booking on the show. And then I've heard Eric Bischoff say, well, I wasn't involved with too much booking. So where is that line at between who was running the booking of the show, who was actually just, here's the big idea, and then you go do it? Like, how do you think that all came about to be? Because like I said, the book covered both phases of that, and I can't make heads or tails of who the hell is actually doing the booking of this show.
Yeah, it's another great question. I think what you're touching on there is the fact that sometimes things happen where there's no objective record to determine, which person is necessarily being more truthful in the situation. So I think what you do in those kind of situations is you quote both of the people involved and you let them get across their side of the story in full, and then you let the reader decide, right? So what sounds more credible to you? I think I hear what you're saying, and I think there is some ambiguity at times, especially with the way that wrestling used to work in that era. As fans, we're always preoccupied with whose idea was that, who came up with this angle, who wrote that promo. And a lot of times what you'll find is it really was a collaborative process. It really was something that maybe one person presented in a room, but by the time they were done in that particular room, it took on a complete life of its own. Then you have other moments where you can definitively say this was one person's work. I'll give you an example of that. Scott Hall's, famous promo where he interrupts the match and comes to the ring on Nitro and, you know who I am, but you don't know why I'm here. That was word for word written by Eric Bischoff, and that's something that actually came out in the lawsuit between WWF at the time and WCW, where they were trying to ascertain where did this verbiage come from in terms of you presenting yourself like the Razor Ramon character. And that's something that all parties involved agreed at that time. Eric wrote word for word. So there are certain things like that where you can pinpoint it. But I think what happens a lot of times is once 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years go by, people's memories are funny. Sometimes people claim credit for things they had nothing to do with and vice versa. So I hear what you're saying with your question for sure.
Yeah, and they are wrestlers. It's a lot of chair shots, brother. I mean, eventually your old memory's gonna get a little fuzzy upstairs, man. Oh, you might remember something 3 different ways before the day's over with, let alone 15 years ago.
Absolutely.
So I know in your book you talked about how and I want to touch on this a little bit because it was a really big part of the book where you just touched on it some too. The executives and the VPs of all these different parts of the Turner organization, they just didn't care for the WCW product. And you go into pretty good detail and it's pretty well known. They wanted it gone. They wanted it out of the portfolio. They wanted it sold or just gone off their television. They found it to be a bit of a joke. And you even covered in there, wrestling doesn't fit in a bucket, right? Like it's not something that just fits in a regular bucket for a marketing, say, campaign. And then I look at television today with all the bad ratings. They would kill for the numbers that WCW got back in the late 90s. Why is it that wrestling was such a downly looked upon product in the late 90s to mid 90s to where now there's 1,500 shows on my television every weekend on the internet with wrestling, and they're all doing fantastic numbers.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I think, Eric in the book talks a great length about some of the issues that WCW had with regard to attracting advertisers, and some of the people who worked for Turner Ad Sales go into that as well, where they would sometimes go into meetings and say, look, these guys are drawing 5.5 million viewers in prime time on live television. This might be a good fit for your product. And there was always that hesitance on the part of these big advertisers. Well, I don't really know if we want to be associated with that fake wrestling stuff, right? I think that whole question, which of course everyone knew the answer to, 100 years ago, right? But that whole question or that whole notion of, don't you guys realize this stuff is all fake? I think that was much more of a talking point back then as compared to today, right? So I think that partially answers your question. Right. And today, of course, it's not uncommon for, you to come across people in everyday life who are heavily into Marvel movies or comic books or what have you. And wrestling has kind of become another niche in that same vein, I think, where there's not the same sort of stigma attached to it. But I think that stigma to some small degree is still there today, but certainly it's not the same as it was back in the 90s.
Yeah. Well, when you say that, and I look at guys like The Rock, right, who got their start in wrestling, and now he's one of the biggest Hollywood stars of all time. John Cena is on his way up in that ranking. It feels like the stigma is still there in some circles, but when it comes to entertainment, can you put money in my pocket is what it's really all coming down to here that I see lately. Mm-hmm. That's just what I'm seeing.
Absolutely. And I think, the struggles in terms of being able to attract advertisers a lot of times you could argue has less to do with the content itself and more to do with the fact that it's just very hard to pin down exactly what wrestling is, even still to this day. But I think the cross section of people across society that have at least a casual interest in wrestling is absolutely fascinating. I mean, one of my most favorite stories that's in the book comes from, and this is a great name, and people who've read the book will light up when I say this name, a guy called Dick Cheatham.
Yes, dude, I thought that was a fake name. I thought that name was totally fake, dude. Who has that name?
You're not the only one. So he was an accountant who worked essentially on the Turner side, Turner Finance. There's kind of a convoluted story behind that, which we go into in the book, but he was one of the rare people that was a big supporter of WCW. And so there's so many quotables in the book where he talks about, again, this tension between the corporate entity and the wrestling company. But what I was getting at is he tells a story in the book where he went for I think it was either a dentist appointment or a doctor's appointment or something one day. And, just to make conversation, the dentist, doctor, whoever it was, asked him, what do you do for a living? And he said, well, I work with Turner Sports, so that means, Braves, Hawks, and WCW, actually. And he said the guy looked at him and he's like, so I got to know the answer to this question. Are Hall and Nash really part of WCW, or like what's going on here? Are they invaders? Are they still with Vince? And so, he just cited that as a typical story of how sometimes in, the most unexpected situations, to our point earlier, you'll come across people that may not be open about the fact that they follow wrestling, but certainly have some knowledge about it for sure.
Not gonna lie, when I was reading the book, I was like, I think I'm reading this name right. And then when I heard the audio version of it, I was like, Dick Cheatham, you've got to be kidding me right now. It's like that old joke. I'm going to my lawyer's office. Cheatham and Howe, they represent me every day.
Yes.
Right.
I'll tell you one thing. If I ever was a porn star, I think that would be one of the names I would use as an on-screen alias. Dick Cheatham.
Especially, I remember talking to him one day, and he said, they used to call me Dirty Dick around the office. And I'm like, all right. I don't know if I can put that in the book. But.
Hey, Guy, I've got to jump in here. Something's been pressing on my mind listening to you guys talk. As you peel the layers of the WCW onion away to find out the inner workings of the organization and what was going on behind the scenes, I'm sure you were probably shocked by some things you saw or heard about. Without giving too much away, because we save it for the book. Let the people buy the book on Amazon or through your website. I've got your website pulled up here right now, Guy Evans Books. In fact, when I get done asking my question, I'm going to move you guys over to one side and pull up Guy's website so people can see the cover of the book. I've got it up in the top right corner by Motorhead, but I would have had that displayed with the price. It's a 5-year expanded edition, I believe, that you have right now.
That's right, yeah. Yep.
But we'll get into that in a second. What was one of the most shocking things you discovered as you were doing your digging and due diligence?
Yeah, I'll just I'll actually just go in specific detail about this one. Usually, okay. I kind of just allude to it, but there was a story that Harvey Schiller told, and Harvey Schiller was the president of Turner Sports and by proxy WCW prior to Eric Bischoff actually attaining that title, right? So
was he really a doctor? Was he really a doctor? Or was that just a honorary title?
I believe, if I would go back and have to check it, but I think, I'm not sure if he was a medical doctor. I think it was more of an academic sort of distinction.
Yes.
But in any event, he told a story in the book about a meeting that he had with Vince McMahon right in the middle of the Monday Night Wars era. So in his words, this is when, I'm paraphrasing here, but essentially things were very competitive between the companies. They were running neck and neck. The competition was at a fever pitch. And Harvey Schiller talks about sitting down and having a meeting with Vince. And I suppose I'll just stop short of saying exactly what was said. But if you read about that particular meeting, it will just completely reframe, at least it did for me, your whole perception of this competition between the two companies, right? So as outsiders, as people who followed it back then, I suppose it would be tempting to think that everyone associated with the WCW organization, especially in management or leadership, was just diametrically opposed to what was going on in the WWF and vice versa, and there would never be any sort of cordial conversations or conversations about what Harvey talks about in the book. But once I heard that on the other end of the phone, that was one of those moments I said, hold on, what did you just say? Because this is just one of, I think, several things in the book that, have never been talked about and weren't known prior to him saying that. So that was an unbelievable story for me.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
I can't recommend the book enough. I don't want to give away your whole book, but there's one other part I wanted to talk about from the book. I'm not going to reveal what it is, but you actually got to the root price of what this thing was sold for to the WWE. And I don't want to give it away, but there was also the number that was thrown out there by the other company that was looking to buy it. And the knowledge that you had on how that financial deal, both of them went down, it is fascinating to me because even to this day, your book is out here. You have it in facts. You have all the information handy. And people still go crazy with the nonsense and the numbers that they throw out there, man. It baffles me.
Yeah, I think that brings on a broader point, which is, you have to take, certainly with a grain of salt, anything that you hear about WCW's financial performance, good or bad. And that's why at times in the book, you'll read a sentence such as, according to company records, WCW grossed this many dollars in this particular year, right? Or WCW, turned a profit of this many dollars according to their own, internal accounting, because it was a very strange and Byzantine accounting system that they employed at Turner. And there's a whole chapter in the book, I think it's chapter 9, which is called An Age-Old Problem, which really goes into some of the difficulties that came along with that, the way that certain expenses or even revenue items will get moved from company to company, depending on sort of the time horizon of certain executives. There may be times where, to make a particular division or department look good, let's just kind of slyly move some revenue or expenses over, and as long as we group a number of entities together, no one will notice. Of course, that was a reality of WCW's position within Turner, that it was grouped into a number of other divisions and labeled as other, right? So if you were to look at a financial statement and get to where other is listed and then see, well, there's a number here for revenue, there's a number here for expenses, WCW at times was grouped in just simply among that, right? So unless you were able to get sort of the records that, only a few people were able to see, which luckily I was for the book, that was the only way to actually separate, an entity like WCW from those other divisions. But as the book goes into, you really have to take that stuff with a grain of salt. It's not like a situation today with AEW, whereas to my knowledge, and I could be wrong, maybe you guys can correct me, I'm not the expert on contemporary wrestling at all, but to my knowledge, this is a company wholly owned by the Khan family. Mm-hmm. So it's not as if it's part of a larger portfolio of 150 subsidiaries, which was the case with TBS Inc. So I think it would be much easier to get a more straightforward understanding of how well that company is doing. But because it's a privately owned company, we don't know that, and perhaps we won't know that for some time. But hopefully that answers your question.
Yes.
Guy, do you have any future endeavors with pro wrestling or pro wrestlers? Do you have anything planned for the future? Another book, perhaps? Or
I can tell you what it is right now. It's going to be the fall of AEW.
Well, you know what? It's funny, isn't it? Because, I think you saying that brings on a couple of thoughts. I think one of the narratives that came along with the fall of WCW was, and I think WWE did a lot to push this, was, WCW's ultimate collapse was by virtue of its creative decline. So essentially, if you were to watch any of those old WWE documentaries or shows about the Monday Night Wars, I think the message you were left with was, only the McMahon family can do this. Anyone else who tries to get into this industry, they're just not creative enough, they're not dedicated enough, they're not disciplined enough, and eventually it will all unravel, right? And I think that was kind of, the stench that lasted for a long time with WCW was just the horrible programming that they put on in the last couple of years, and ultimately what happened to the company. And I've made the point in the past that, both things can be true, right? No one would say with a straight face that was compelling, programming in the last couple of years, at least on the level as it was prior. But ultimately what happened to WCW, really was due to a lot of other factors that we go into in the book. And so when it comes to AEW, one has to wonder, when you think about the resources of the Khan family and, the willingness to be in this business where, you could make the argument at times it doesn't seem like it's the most profitable venture for them. And there is the ability to absorb losses. Is this a company that essentially will just live forever, even if it is losing, a tremendous amount of money on a yearly basis, because there is the ability to absorb those losses, and this is a passion project for, the son of Mr. Khan, Tony Khan, right? So it's not even, you could argue maybe it's not even necessary for the company to turn a profit, as ridiculous as that sounds. But to return to your question, though, one of the things that I'm working on at the moment, actually, which we're hoping to get out by the end of the year, and this kind of links into an earlier question where you guys were asking about documents and records and all this kind of stuff. I had some contact earlier this year with David Penzer, who, of course, was the ring announcer back in the WCW.
Right.
So David, it turns out, has kept a treasure trove of formats, emails, production notes, all of this stuff, going back to the WCW days, going back to when he worked for TNA. And to make a long story short, what we're working on at the moment, I think, is going to be a unique kind of semi-autobiography and semi-look behind the curtain, where we're going to be telling David's story in the wrestling business, but we're also going to be including in full detail all of these records, which no one, including myself, in large part, had seen prior to him coming across this stuff. So I think if you're really interested in that kind of behind-the-curtain stuff that not many people have seen, that would be something to keep an eye on as well.
Excellent.
That's going to be amazing. That's going to be amazing.
I can't put it over enough, but there's one other thing I got to thank you for some of the, specifically Vince Russo, right? There's some stuff out there about Vince Russo, and he gets a lot of heat in the wrestling community, for well-deservedly so. But you wrote a piece about the USA Today article, and I have heard this as a wrestling fan forever about how it was this huge page spread. And then I read the book, and I was like, it's tiny. Are you kidding me? If you're not looking for that, you're not even going to know that thing was there. And even today, I kid you not, Guy, last week, someone on Twitter told me they interviewed you, and you said, no, it was this huge article. He even admitted it. I was like, you're a fool. You've never read his book. You're one of those people. Go sit in the corner. You suck. Guy Evans' book, definitive detail, Nitro. I can't put it over enough, man.
Let's put it over right now. Special anniversary sale. Nitro was released 5 years ago this week. And here's a quote from Eric Bischoff, who is a guy very familiar with. The most definitive, well-written, and thoroughly researched book on the rise and fall of WCW. And he would know. That's Eric Bischoff, former WCW president, and Ric Flair's son-in-law, the great Conrad Thompson, and his podcasting empire. This is, without question, the very best book ever written on professional wrestling. Expanded hardcover edition for just $29.95, a limited time, folks. You can buy that directly from GuyEvansBooks.com. Guy, is that limited edition available on Amazon?
It is, in fact, yeah. Thank you for asking. If you punch into Amazon WCW Nitro book or Nitro Guy Evans, if you click on the hardcover option, you'll be able to order that on Amazon if you so choose as well. So thanks for asking.
Yes, I'm looking at it. Let me go ahead and share this. I'm on Amazon right now. They have the Kindle versions of it right here. This is the Audible audiobook, which Don purchased.
Again.
Yes.
Don.
The hardcover is $39.95. Now, this is not the expanded edition I'm looking at right now. However, if you go down here, they also have the Kindle for those of you who are have Kindle Unlimited. It's free, or it's $9.99 to buy a Kindle version of it if you don't have Kindle Unlimited. The expanded edition of The Incredible Rise and Inevitable Collapse of Ted Turner's WCW. Also, his other book, Grateful, Eric Bischoff.
Which is next. That is next on my reading list. I will be paying you more money, sir. You will be getting more cash. I plan on buying that.
I got to keep coming out with books. I like what I'm hearing here.
Dude, I love your writing, man.
Revenue.
Guy, I've got sheets upon sheets of stuff. I took notes from what you have in this book alone. I can't give away your book as far as the stories I was trying to jog my memory on. I'll say this much. The Graham story alone made me stop and replay it 3 times on my Audible book. I was like, did he just say what I think he said? No, he's working me, bro. I got to hear that again.
Well, I just want to, if I could, go back to something you said a couple of minutes ago about the USA Today, claim. Right. So
yeah,
that's quite interesting to me that you picked up on that, because those are the kind of details, right, where I think when you're doing something like this and you hear a claim and you hear it repeated so often that essentially it becomes true. Again, going back to what we talked about throughout this whole interview, that triggers that curiosity as to, well, to what extent is that actually true? And what did this actually look like? And does that offset, a lot of the criticism that came with just randomly on an episode of Thunder, which was the B show at the time, putting the world title on David Arquette, right? And if you think about the context of it, this was just a couple of weeks after they did the latest reset, where forget everything that's happened in the last few months. Vince Russo, Eric Bischoff, they're working together now. We're going to wipe the slate clean. It's a new WCW. And you could see the panic in week 2 when the week 1 numbers were not as expected. And then the following week was the Arquette, debacle, right? So if you look at the paragraph that you mentioned that's quoted in the book, and you look at the coverage that was actually garnered from that title switch, an interesting question to ask yourself is, if someone picking up that paper who had never watched wrestling before, right, or may have watched it as a kid and knew Hulk Hogan or something but didn't really follow it, if they were to read that, would that inspire a single person to say, you know what, I've got to tune in to see this. This is compelling programming, right? I'm just kind of spitballing here, but I would suggest that number would probably be closer to 0 than maybe what they were expecting. And I think if you look at what happened in the ratings, following that decision, that kind of bears out that thesis. So it's just interesting that often gets cited as, well, it wasn't a disaster because we got this amazing coverage at USA Today, where in reality, I think it was something that hardly anyone would have noticed.
You know what else they do? They put obituaries in the paper as well. And that was the obituary of WCW in the paper. On national headlines, David Arquette's a champ, WCW's dead. Next.
Bye-bye.
It's hard to come back from that.
They didn't.
That was terrible.
What really can you say? Man.
That's all I can cover, because I can't give the man's book away. I just want to put it over again. I just want to say thanks. I know you had some technical difficulties. I know we're getting close. You said you had to drop in an hour. We're getting close to it, so I don't want to take up all your time, sir. I just want to say thank you on behalf of all the Square and Circle Maniacs for giving us a little bit of your time today, man.
No, guys, listen, hopefully we can do this again. I really, truly appreciate, all the kind things you said about the book. It means a lot to me, and can't thank you enough. So it's been a pleasure. If you want to go a little bit longer, that's cool too, but really appreciate it.
Guy, before we let you go, I got to ask you, I'm looking at your website right now. Now, I need you to explain to me and the people who are watching this, who are thinking about buying your book, what is the Ultimate Nitro Bundle?
Yeah.
What is actually in that?
Yeah, so this kind of came out of a lot of people checking out the book and saying, well, I can see here that you've referenced things like production formats and things of that nature. Is there any way I could get my hands on those? So we decided ultimately to offer this product where if you pick up, that's actually the expanded version of the book. So again, this thing is absolutely massive. I mean, it's
wow.
4 bonus chapters. Eric wrote the foreword for this edition of the book. I think there's over 100 additional footnotes, which you don't have in the first book. All kinds of tidbits. There's more images in this one. But we decided to offer this kind of as a bundle where if you get the new book, along with that will come, I think it's 3 production formats and trading cards and some lost kind of internet-only broadcasts, which WCW did back in the day.
I didn't even want to get into that because that was so amazing to read that. Mind blown again. I didn't want to cover that because that's one of those tidbits in the book, man, that when I read it, I was like, you got to be kidding me, man. They had a gold mine in front of them and weren't smart enough to pick up the phone and say, hey, fix the internet, Sparky.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? I mean, just the missed opportunities. I know this is something that if you speak to some of the more interesting people to talk to when it comes to WCW, people who worked on the production end, because these are people who they were watching everything, right? They were going back and they were editing together packages. They were putting together promos. They were having to, if they were told by the booking team, hey, on this show, we need a segment here calling back to 3 weeks ago, they would need to know what that was. So they had really an intimate, knowledge of the product, right? And if you speak to a lot of those production people, one of the phrases will come up over and over again was, that was a missed opportunity. This was a missed opportunity. We could have done more with that. And I was actually talking about this with someone the other day, and this will kind of blow your mind. just to give one example, right? This may have made it in the book, I can't remember, but there were these fans from all over the world who would send to WCW's headquarters, letters, in the cases of some fans, other things as well. And they would just kind of take this stuff and put it in a room, right? Okay, we just got another, barrel of mail here from fans, all across the world. What do we do with it? Just throw it in that room. We don't want to think about it. Someone finally decided as a project to go through all of this stuff, and they were able to put together a mailing list of like 250,000 fans, right, from all over the world. And if you think about it, these are your most ardent fans. These are people who are actually figuring out where the company is located and sending in, these are the people you can really make money from, is my point, right?
Right.
But going back to the missed opportunity theme, up until that point, no one had considered, hey, this might be a great way to actually sell some extra tickets or merchandise or home videos. At the time, we've got these people's addresses and contact information, but as with many other things with WCW, they didn't have the infrastructure for it, and just the internet is a perfect example of that, a missed opportunity.
Unbelievable. So that bundle that you got up there, the big one, that doesn't happen to have the infamous Vince Russo memo, does it?
Oh, which one are you talking about?
Well, if there was one, I'm not going to get into it, but the book, man, I mean, like I said, I don't want to give your book away, but there's some juicy nuggets in there about, some of these whack jobs that were losing their shit, so to speak. I mean, just coming completely unhinged, man. And your book is like, all right, this guy's losing it. You didn't say it. You were very polite in how you put it, and here's what it actually said. But
yes,
you can read between the lines if you use your imagination. You watch enough wrestling, you know what was happening back there.
I'm gonna have to go back and read my own book now. I'm curious. I'm like, okay, which one's he talking about here?
He's broken your book down on a granular level.
I know.
And he was for 2 months. We gotta get Guy Evans. 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 We gotta get Guy Evans.
I mean, believe it or not, in the wrestling circles for people that read books, your folklore has grown into this thing that now, if you don't read this book, you don't know anything about wrestling as far as how the business side of it works. I mean, that's all I can say.
And when you wrote that book, Guy, you took a great leap of faith because you're assuming that wrestling fans can read, which is a big thing right there.
I'm going to put that to the side. But
very diplomatic, Guy. Very diplomatic.
You know what, though? I mean, you got to keep in mind, and just if you can imagine this, you work on something for a while and you think, all right, maybe a couple dozen people will find this interesting. They'll talk about it for a couple days. I'll get like a nice email or two and move on to something else. For this to kind of turn into what it turned into is absolutely mind blowing, to be honest with you. Absolutely mind blowing. But primarily, again, I'll go back to it. If it wasn't for a lot of those key people that you mentioned saying, yeah, I'll do it. Right. Because you got to think, what incentive do they have to give up hours of their time to talk about this stuff? Zero. They could have said, no, I've got better things to do. I'm not interested. Without a lot of those people, it really would have been severely lacking, because you would have been referring to people that you never get to hear from. So I've really just got to put all the credit on those people, to be honest.
Excellent.
Well, buddy, you did all the research, so I'm not going to let them get all the credit. You did the research. You took the time. You wrote an amazing novel. I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. That's all I've got. You got anything for him, Motor?
I got one last thing I'd like to say. Just like I said, I got to the audio book. I'm going to get the new one. I'm going to get the actual hardcover. But for anybody out there that, let's say you don't know anything about WCW, ground up until the end, and the big time era when there was the WCW versus WWE, Monday Night Wars, you need this book. This book is great. Just listen to the audio book. I was completely impressed and blown away. And once again, on behalf of what Don and what Johnny Bottles is going to say, and I already said, thank you very much again for being on the show, man, because I learned a whole bunch today as well.
And folks, let's go down the list of value here that this expanded edition has. It's the expanded 2021 hardcover edition. Let's see, it's normally runs for $59.95 from your finer bookstores. But he's selling it on GuyEvansBooks.com. Guy, GUYEVANS Books.com. And it's only $29.95. A great value. Here's what you get. Bonus chapters, a new foreword from Eric Bischoff. 4 bonus chapters, the new foreword, dozens of new tidbits, expanded image section. You actually see the formats and scripts of the TV shows, of the episodes of Nitro, like Guy said earlier. 100 footnotes added to the original story. The reviews are off the charts for this thing. Russo's
memo might be in there. Russo's memo might be in there. We don't know.
Could be. You never know.
I think so.
We told you what Eric Bischoff and Conrad Thompson said. Chris Harrington, who is the VP from AEW of their business strategy, well written and captivating, a fresh take on the time period, and it may be the best overall wrestling book to date, says David Bixenspan, the infamous David Bixenspan from Deadspin. So, great value, $29.95, folks. Go through your pockets, go through your pants and the hamper, dig up your shekels. It's a great book. Don Wayne approves. It's got his stamp of approval. And if you're a wrestling fan, this is a book for you. Yes.
Nitro. Guy, where can people reach you at if they want to get a hold of you?
Yeah, so it's real simple. You can follow, probably the best place to go is to go on Twitter. It's just at WCW Nitro Book. Or if you want to shoot me an email, it's guyevanswcwbook@gmail.com. Those are probably the 2 best places.
All right.
Guy Evans, everybody. Guy, you're doing the Lord's work, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. It's been a pleasure.
Let me say one last time, guys. Thank you very much. Really appreciate the invite. Anytime you want to do it again, please let me know. And definitely be tuning into what you guys are doing after today, because great vibe, great questions, and wish you guys all the best of luck as well. Thank you.
Be careful.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Guy. God bless you. Have a good one, sir.
Loved it.
You too, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care, Guy.
All
Guy
right.
Evans.
Fantastic.
Wow.
What a guest. What a guest.
What a guy. What a pal.
Guys. That was way cool.
I mean, I don't want to get into his book, too much, but some of the juicy details of that thing, son, let me tell you what.
Don't give it away. Let them buy the book. Let them buy the book.
So,
hey, guys, swig a beer for Guy Evans.
All I've got is water, pal.
You son of a bitch, you got me again.
I had to stay on my toes this time. That's a sharp cat, man. I couldn't come at him like a random AEW fan. That's a smart dude.
You don't want to have him spit water or whatever he's drinking all over his new setup he's got there.
No,
right, Motor?
No, I don't.
I don't. Ruin that.
So anything else going on, you guys? You guys want to talk a little modern wrestling real quick? I saw Dirty Dom as your new North American champion.
Absolutely.
Did you see that? And did you see the number they pulled on that show?
700,000, I believe.
Over 700,000.
Over 700,000. Yeah, they've got to get eyes on NXT. Their goal right now, their mission statement is not to have NXT just be developmental. They want it to be a third brand. So that's why you're seeing the influx of established WWE people on the main roster is the best terminology I could use. Floating down there occasionally, doing some angles, and it gives the kids down there something to do so they can figure this is the way we're working when we get up to the main roster. They'll learn from working with Rollins. They'll learn from working with the Judgment Day. They'll learn with working with Natty Neidhart. She was down there. I think she was the first one that ever went down.
So why put the title on him, though? Like, that's sort of my question is he going to be on NXT a lot now? Like, how the hell does this entire dynamic work? You can't just take Dirty Dom off of Monday Night Raw and SmackDown and put him on NXT. It's a huge draw.
What do you think, Motor?
I think it's a downgrade. Tell you guys the truth. Put him on NXT. NXT's all right, but I think the direction that this could head might not be that beneficial for him. Just my opinion.
Well, they're trying to get more eyes on NXT. I think Triple H is laughing when he thinks about NXT is doing twice the number that Rampage is doing. So,
well, my whole thing when I got the ratings, I was like, wow, that beat Collision on on Saturday night. I didn't see
did.
that coming because they average around 500,000. That's roughly what they do on
Yeah.
Tuesday nights, right, on NXT.
Yeah, they bounce between 500,000 and 600,000. Yeah.
Yeah, so they drew in almost 200,000 more fans for that one-off, and that's what the average was. Like, I wonder what the peak was in the quarter hours. I haven't seen that yet. I also
Don?
50,000.
Don, you're locking up on us, Don.
Oh,
Don,
what
are
about
you
now?
okay?
Now you're okay. You're okay now.
we got you. Yeah, there it is. Woo!
In and out, in and out, in and out, in and out.
I think their goal with the Dominic Mysterio thing is he's the biggest heel, arguably the biggest heel in wrestling today.
I don't even think it's arguable. I don't think it's arguable. I think he is.
Well,
He's
there are
getting
some
booed
people.
out of the building.
You know it. I know it. Motor knows it. There are people that will argue the point and say
They're
that,
morons, pal. They're morons.
Yes, they
If that's
are.
your argument,
Yes,
you're a moron. He is the
Right.
biggest heel in wrestling right now.
biggest
You can't
heel in
argue
wrestling.
it.
Can't deny.
Listen to the fans.
Can't
Listen
deny.
to the fans. The fans hate his ass.
And this gives Dominic Mysterio a broader slate of people he can work with different styles. You know, there are a lot of high flyers down at NXT, a lot of new people down at NXT, and I'm sure that Dominic can show them some things. He learned from his father. He didn't go to NXT. His father trained him. And Dominic can, and someone else trained him too. The name escapes me right now, but someone else did train Dominic. It wasn't just his father. And I think the goal there is the eyes on NXT, season Dominic a little bit more. He's going to have to bust out on his own eventually from Judgment Day and be an individual WWE superstar. He's got Rhea Ripley on his arm as a heater, a heat magnet, and she's when they put her in that group, they took Edge out, they put Rhea Ripley in, and it just took off.
Totally changed.
But I felt like Edge should have
totally
stayed.
changed the whole dynamic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I thought Edge should have stayed, in my opinion. Adding Finn Balor did nothing to the group. Edge should have stayed, in my opinion. That's just I didn't like it when Edge left and Finn came in. It didn't feel like the right hit. It just didn't.
It's like when you go to the you're in the 7-Eleven, you go to the little plexiglass case where the donuts are, and you see the chocolate are all gone, the glazed are all gone, you've just got the cake donut, the plain cake donut. That's what Finn Balor is to me, a plain cake donut. He's a great worker.
That's a good analogy.
There's something about Finn Balor that makes you want to watch him in the ring. But the promos, maybe it's the Irish accent, I don't know. Maybe he doesn't believe in what he's saying, which you have to if you're acting and delivering lines. I don't know. What do you think about that, Motor? What do you think about Balor?
Well, I think if anybody from WWE who does the wardrobe is listening, to get that man some cake donut tights, because that's a perfect analogy. He's one of those guys. He's another one that I tried to, give him the benefit of the doubt, because he is a professional wrestler and he's up there and I'm not. But
Right.
He just doesn't. I don't know.
He doesn't have that pop.
Yes, you just took the word. He doesn't have that pop. That here comes Finn Balor. Yeah, I don't see it. I don't see it. I don't feel it. The guy is a decent athlete. He can do the stuff, but
Better as a
Incredible
heel,
shape.
better as a heel, Motor, or better as a face? What do you
I think
think?
he's better as a heel. I think
Okay.
he's better as a heel.
Big Don, what do you think?
Oh, I think I'm going to go roll in some goddamn thumbtacks and call myself a professional wrestler later.
Oh, no.
That's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to throw some thumbtacks over here, film it when it's not on TV, and you can call me a pro wrestler. I mean,
Don,
I didn't watch the show last night. Oh, the other part that happened last night that I'm sure AEW fans are so happy about, they're becoming more and more sports entertainment. And
Yes,
they
nobody's
are.
paying attention.
You just said
We had
that
a
last
dance-off last night. We had a dance-off with your world champion last night. And if this shit had happened to the WWE, they'd have crucified it. But because they're such homers, which, by the way, they don't know what homers are, so I had to explain that to one of these goofs. These homers would have crucified the WWE for doing that. And I would have too, because it's stupid in any division. It's stupid in any wrestling company. This is not Yo MTV Rap circa 1988. What the hell are you doing out there? And then we got Captain Flappy over here jumping in thumbtacks off camera, to get a pop out of his buddies, looking like a clown.
Flappy.
What the hell am I watching, man?
So Kota Ibushi is Japanese for Captain Flappy?
Apparently so.
Right.
Captain Flappy.
It's Captain Flappy from now on. Captain Flappy.
Flappy.
Let's just go ahead and follow some.
Oh my God in heaven!
Light tubes outside. I'm just gonna go follow those in the yard for the heck of it. Just because I want to be a pro wrestler, and I'm gonna go jump on some glass.
It was a blood feud that they had going for how many months now? The Elite versus the Blackpool Combat Club, and they had a bloody match in the ring. I saw clips of it on YouTube because after the first hour, I saw them getting ready for that. I tapped out. I said, I'm not going to watch this whole thing. I'm going to watch the other half. I'm going to watch that blood and guts match tonight and kick back and see what goes on with that. But I saw the clips on YouTube and Twitter, and oh my God in heaven. But anyway, It was everything you thought it was going to be, I guess.
A disaster.
Yes, a disaster.
It was a cluster.
At the end, after this blood feud where people paid the price of the ring, Motor, they were bleeding, beaten down. They all shook hands at the end.
Mortal enemies shaking hands at the end.
Mortal enemies shaking hands. And then Captain Flappy does a backdrop into the thumbtacks and laughs about it as
freaking Nest
walking in the ring.
Nest plunge asshole.
I don't get it. I never will. I don't get it.
It's
not
because
professional wrestling to me. It's pure garbage. It's just and then shake hands, really. I realized kayfabe went away a long time ago. But you know what? That's the problem with modern wrestling today. That's why a lot of people keep tuning out of it. Is because there is no struggle. There is no fight between two grown men. You got guys out there falling on thumbtacks for Christ's sake, and beat the hell out of each other and shake hands. Hey, good job. Hey, Don, you're a Denver fan. I'm a Raiders fan, right?
Go to hell, Raiders. Go to hell.
What happens after some of our games? They'll shake hands, but you know damn well there's other guys that are out there that want to just kick the living shit out of each other, and they do it for a whole goddamn game, and then after the game's over, they still have problems.
I'm still going to hate the Raiders. I'm going to hate them. When we win, I'm still going to hate them. When we win, I can still hate them.
There are no stakes. There's no sense of urgency. There's no sense of everything's on the line in these matches. It's just ridiculous. Like we said in our last show, it's the video game mentality of booking. Let's just
I did watch Raw. I watched Raw this week. Mm-hmm. Cody Rhodes is a massive babyface.
Yes, he is.
Brock Lesnar is a massive dick. That guy is such a dick.
I like him better as an ass. I really do.
Oh, absolutely.
He is the best ass and the great bad guy.
Wait,
great.
What did you just say?
The best ass in the world?
That's right.
Woo!
Bottles?
I'm speechless. I found it great that we get to see Dusty Rhodes' widow, Cody's mom in the front.
Yeah.
Now, if you're a fan of old school WWF, you've seen Mrs. Dusty Rhodes somewhere before. Remember when Dusty was in the WWE and they had him doing those Americana vignettes? Where he was a plumber, he was a butcher. You can beat my prices, but you can't beat my meat. Remember that?
Yeah.
And people would say, you hear a woman say, "Hey, aren't you?" And he'd go like that, and it would freeze. He was doing one at a gas station, and he had on a wife beater and his jeans and a rag in his back pocket, and he was singing, "You can trust your car to the man that wears the star." Back then, that was the Texaco. Remember Texaco gas station?
Yeah.
That was their jingle for their TV commercials. Oh, you can trust your car to the man that wears a star. And he's singing like that and shucking and jiving out to the gas pump where a pretty little lady pulled in. And he went and checked her oil. He gave her gas. He filled her up.
Oh, did he now?
As best as he can with that belly.
Full service.
But he looked at the windshield, and he's wiping the windshield, and he spits on the windshield. You got a little Georgia June bug right there. I'll take that right off for you. Oh, you're so nice, she's saying. That was Mrs. Dusty Rhodes.
I knew she had done a
in that car. Yeah,
I knew she had.
That was Cody's mom in that car, which I thought it was pretty neat that Vince let her come in and do that. That was pretty cool.
So I like Raw. Thought it was a good show this week.
Raw was a good show, yes. Raw was a good show.
Anything you see that you're like, that's great. That's amazing. Anything stand out? The Cody Rhodes promo I thought was pretty damn entertaining.
Cody Rhodes promo was the highlight for me.
The shocking thing was the fact that Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez
what the hell?
lost the tag titles. And I will say this, the reason why they lost the tag titles is because Liv Morgan still has a bum shoulder. Despite everything she did in the ring, she's still injured. And they want to move Raquel Rodriguez as the challenger for Rhea Ripley. Can you imagine when those two Amazons meet in the ring? It's going to be a great match.
I hope they don't ruin it like they did in NXT, where they immediately went. They met in NXT, if my memory serves correctly, and it was immediately to a cage match. Am I right?
I'm not sure.
I believe it was.
I swear, I remember her, and she had a different name than I want to say, or whatever it was.
Yep.
Yeah, she wasn't. She was Raquel Gonzalez.
But then she changed names, and then she went back. Whatever. I can't keep up with the names sometimes.
They changed her name to Rodriguez because her father was a wrestler, a Mexican wrestler, Ricky Gonzalez. From years and years and years ago, didn't do anything of note. He was a jobber. Made his rounds through all the major promotions and all that as a jobber. However, he still was a wrestler. The fact of the matter is Carmella's father was a jobber for the WWE when it was WWF many, many years ago.
Were they part of the Speedy outfit?
Speedy?
Gonzalez?
Speedy Gonzalez. I let my guard down and I walked right into it. I walked right into that.
Jesus God.
But you know how WWE has to own the name. They have to trademark their name. Yeah. They couldn't have her use her real last name, so Raquel Rodriguez they changed it to. Well, it didn't really matter. It still ends in a Z, so it was a smooth transition.
There was one other spot, and you reminded me of it, and I'm glad you did. The Rhea Ripley headbutt about scared the shit out of me when I was watching it live, dude. When she popped that thing up, I was like, oh, all right, girl, calm your ass down. You ain't got to get serious about it. It looked violent. It looked great. It brought me back to being a fan. I was like, oh, she just headbutted the shit out of her.
That was one of the better ones I've seen in a long time, man. Long time.
They made it look good. They made it look good.
Did.
It was fast, violent, and I literally I jumped. My tubby ass was moving on that spot. That's it, baby.
And I will have to say that they gave the titles to two deserving women. Sonya Deville is a great heel. She'll never be looked upon as a face. She's a great heel the way she is.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Chelsea Green is doing great character work. Whoever decided or came up with the idea to give her the Karen type gimmick of the suburban soccer mom who's always complaining. Yeah. If they would have gave her the Karen haircut, that would have been awesome. That would have been perfect. But Chelsea Green is phenomenal in that role, and she's been in the WWE for not quite a year, and she hasn't broken her wrist, which is amazing. And remember how she was in the WWE before she broke her wrist twice?
Yeah.
And then she was in Impact, and she broke her wrist again.
That's right.
Yes.
Never saw her there, because I don't watch that shit.
She was Laurel Van Ness. That was her character name. A rich girl, a spoiled rich girl.
I'm a rich girl, and you've gone too far. So that was really the other part that caught my attention.
Folks, on Amazon this week, we have a sale on Don Wayne's Greatest Hits.
No, it is not. It is not going to be that. I am not going to be doing that. But yeah, I look forward to Raw. I'll probably watch a little bit of SmackDown tomorrow. Collision Saturday. I'll probably watch. See what's going on there. Mm-hmm. I didn't watch a lick of last night. I couldn't bring myself to do it. So, that's all I got for my wrestling information this week. You guys got anything else?
Britt Baker was on, and she wrestled. Kayla forgot her name. It was in fact she almost looked like a little bit a heavier version of Saraya. Pale, black hair, shoulder length.
Was that her real name? Forgot her name?
Forgot her name. Yeah, Kayla forgot her name. She's Indian. She's Cherokee. Kayla forgot her name. No,
she's from the Who Gives a Fuck tribe.
She wrestled Britt Baker, and she made Britt Baker look like Luthez.
Ooh.
Wow.
And her wrestling skill. This chick, either she dumbed herself down in her wrestling acumen and just hung back in the corner on the turnbuckle until Britt Baker could get into position to do it. It was a quick match, over before you knew it. But Baker is just so awkward, and she's like if you took a newly born calf and put a blindfold over its eyes and just let her walk around. That's Britt Baker in a wrestling ring.
What has happened to her? How did she digress to this point? Because her mic skills got way better. She looked like she was getting better. And then suddenly, I don't know what's happened to her, man. It's like it's going in reverse.
Better verbally and worse in the ring. I think she was more comfortable working as a heel than working as a face. She knows how to work as a heel more. Right.
Yeah.
Right. But she may be a heel if Adam Cole turns on MJF. If Adam Cole turns on MJF, you think MJF's going to turn on Adam Cole.
I don't think it's going to happen.
I think Adam Cole's going to turn on MJF. That's what
I don't think it's going to happen.
No?
I don't think either one of those. Nope.
You don't think they're going to turn?
It's going to happen. Nope. I just don't see it. I'm more interested in the SummerSlam build. Like, I know we're going to get Rhea and Gonzalez. We're going to get the final match between Cody and Brock. We're going to get to see Jey Uso take on his cousin, the mighty one, Roman Reigns.
Yes.
Who the hell? What are they doing with the tag division? Is that shit going anywhere? It's like a hamster wheel, man. Nothing's going on with it.
It's just spinning and spinning. They can't get any traction.
Yep.
They got those guys. They gave those guys the undisputed championship belts, and they don't know what to do with them now.
Yep.
They're taking on all comers, though. I will say that.
Can we get rid of those Trojan Man condom titles, by the way? Can we get rid of that? The safe sex tag team titles? Like, every time I see it, I'm like, they're practicing safe sex again. Here come the champions. Shit's ridiculous, man. Why do you have a condom ornament on your title?
They haven't decided if they're going to unify the definitely like they did with the ladies tag titles. If they're going to unify the separate shows tag titles, they haven't decided yet.
Well, they don't have enough good tag teams though to have two separate runoffs of divisions. I mean, they just
they do. They can bring guys up from NXT. They can bring guys up from NXT for that. Here's the rumored. Let's take a look at, while we're here, before we leave, let's take a look at the rumored SummerSlam matches. And I'm going to pull this up. Boys, hang on a sec, and I'll have
Trojan Man.
And boom, boom, boom. There we go.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, probably the main event will be Cody Rhodes versus Brock Lesnar.
You think that's going to be the main event?
I kind of hope it is. I mean, I don't know.
I would think that it would have to be the Usos. It had to be the Uso battle.
Yeah. I think with SummerSlam, I think this might be the curtain jerker match because Brock likes to get on and get out and go home.
Yeah,
right. So this could be the first match. This could be the first match. Then you've got for the World Heavyweight Championship, the Raw title, Seth Rollins versus Balor.
Boo.
Yeah.
The match no one asked for, we're getting it anyway.
Right. Well, no, Finn Balor asked for it. He asked for it in the locker room when he kicked the hell out of Rollins.
Let's just get to where that briefcase gets cashed in because I'm so ready to see that guy get a belt.
Motor, what's your take on Ronda Rousey versus Shayna Baszler?
I thought Ronda Rousey was splitting, man.
She is. She is.
This is it after that.
I think this is her last match.
Okay.
So she's probably going to put over Shayna Baszler.
She was misused this second return. The smiley thing coming to the ring, it was totally not her, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. I don't understand why they went that direction with her because she's a legitimate badass, and she should have stayed a legitimate badass. Not what they had her doing the last year or so, man. It just.
I'll tell you why they did that. You know why they did that? Because Vince tells the women to smile when they walk down to the ring.
Yeah,
he also tells them to skip
and smile.
Yes, because he's probably a little thrill goes up his left leg when he sees them skip.
You want to know what he tells his paralegals?
To go up my leg. That's what he tells the paralegal.
Here's $1 million.
Sign this paper.
Yes.
Paralegal intrigue.
Guess how much change I have in my pocket. Just use your hands.
And then we've got Gunther and Drew McIntyre, which, take it or leave it. I'm just glad that they're putting some prestige on the Intercontinental title because Drew McIntyre is not an icy guy. He's a heavyweight guy, and I feel he's obviously going to do the job. Yeah. But this is going to rub off on Gunther and give him that heavyweight title next level feel that they're trying to build with him.
Yes.
Well, if there's no shenanigans and for a DQ or for McIntyre to lose through interference, if there's nothing like that, he just flat out gets pinned by Gunther, then you know Drew McIntyre has not agreed to a new contract.
Right.
Because his contract's almost up. And he hasn't.
Well, I think he wins either way. I think Gunther wins either way. I think Gunther's winning the Royal Rumble this year. Well, yeah, I think he's winning the Royal Rumble.
I would hope so, because I'm a big fan of his. I really am. I like him, and like some of the other people have talked about, some of the other podcasters, ex-wrestlers. If this was the 80s, you know damn well what he'd come to the arena wearing. You know damn well what he'd be wearing going into the damn ring.
He'd be just like a Nazi. The helmet with the spike on top, all that.
Foreign menace would be coming into the ring.
Yes, absolutely.
He'd be Russian right now. He would.
He'd be Vladimir.
Yeah, Vladimir Putin stand.
Motor. Let me ask you this, and then I'll get to Don. I'll ask you too. Think about it, Don. Motorhead, who do you see dethroning Gunther? Who, if you were booking, who would you have dethrone Gunther, and when? Obviously, you would do it for a WrestleMania, if you were going to do it.
Okay, this may seem a little far-fetched. Braun Breaker.
He's the only man to pin Gunther. In WWE.
Exactly why I think he would be a good guy to dethrone him. But, you know...
Storytelling continuity, Don Wayne.
Yeah, I like it. I do like that.
But go ahead, Motor. Finish your thought.
Well, to me, he's... personally, you know, there's a laundry list of other guys that probably could jump on there. But I think Braun Breaker holding that title would be a perfect model for the Intercontinental Champion. And then, you know, who knows what happens after that.
Yes.
How many guys have had the Intercontinental Championship belt and then went to be heavyweight champion?
Quite a few. Quite a few,
yeah.
So to me, it'd be like a great stepping stone for him. Keep Gunther still in the mix. You know, have him chasing, do a couple follow-up matches maybe. But I would love to see Braun Breaker get it and then change his damn name back to Steiner, for Christ's sake.
They don't want to do that because the Steiners actually own that last name. The real last name is Rex Steiner.
Yeah.
And the name Steiner they copyrighted for professional wrestling purposes. So Vince would have to borrow that from them. So that's why they changed his name. But Braun Breaker was one of the cheesiest freaking names. It was almost like it should have been in that movie. What was that movie where Hogan fought Zeus?
Oh, No Holds Barred.
That sounds like a name out of No Holds Barred. Hogan was Rip Roarum.
Yeah.
Rip Roarum versus Braun Breaker.
Oh, perfect.
Come on.
Perfect.
80s cheese at its finest right now in wrestling.
Cheese, the cheese wheel.
What do you think, Don? Who would you have?
You know, I can't argue anything he said, so I'm going to go with his answer. But the one that gets me is L.A. Knight.
You like the yeah.
I like L.A. Knight. If you don't give him the title at SummerSlam, you're going to miss an opportunity. Because right now he's white hot, and you've got to jump on this and ride it while you can. And I don't know if he's going to be the heel or babyface or clearly going to a babyface type deal. And you know, Vince likes to have all of his titles, you know, evened out with baby faces and heels. So you got to keep him a heel, but I don't know that you can do that because the fans love the guy. I don't know how you do it.
Well, we right now are looking at the CBS Sports website where someone's going through analyzing prospective matches for SummerSlam, and they pick Austin Theory versus L.A. Knight.
Yep.
Or Santos Escobar. It could be a three-way. It could be a one-on-one match. But
I don't get that.
Escobar won a fatal four-way match to qualify for the finals. So Knight will battle Sheamus, Rey Mysterio, and Cameron Grimes for a spot opposite Escobar in the finals. This has been done, I believe. What's the date on this article? Okay, July 18th. We're not that far removed from it. Okay. So LA Knight's got to they got to put a belt on LA Knight.
Yeah, you've got to do it now. You can't wait anymore. You've got to get that push going.
would you save it for a pay-per-view, or would you do it on network television for the ratings?
No, I'm doing it on SummerSlam. I'm gonna wait till SummerSlam.
Okay.
They don't need WWE doesn't need this to get their ratings up. The ratings are what they are because they've got about 4 or 5, I'd say, compelling storylines right now. That's about where they're at.
Let's look at Rhea Ripley versus Raquel Rodriguez. You see a title change there?
Hell no. Get that shit.
That's what I thought. I don't think so either. What about you, Motor? Does she hold on to it?
Rhea Ripley?
Yeah. Does she hold on to the belt?
Yes, without a doubt. I can't see Raquel Rodriguez getting that thing.
No, you're not going to get that thing off of Rhea Ripley for a long time, man.
No,
we're about to see a long dance. We might see her unify that thing against somebody at WrestleMania next year to have one female champion like they have with Roman Reigns right now.
That's a good point because I would hope that they do that. Unify the belt, damn, and give them one championship for the women. One.
Mm-hmm. How about the Undisputed Tag Team Championships? Possibly Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn versus the Judgment Day.
That interests me in one regard only, because I want to see that big bastard get a title. I'm dying to see this guy on TV more than I am right now with some gold around his waist. He's a star.
Priest?
He is a star.
Damian Priest is a star.
Yeah. If you went back and looked at him 15 years ago when he was Punishment Martinez on the independent circuit and Ring of Honor, he's unrecognizable from what he is now. He's overweight, flabby, and now he's a monster.
He's got that deep voice that'll scare the shit out of small children. He's got a great build. The dude is a big guy. Yeah.
And all these stories that come out about LA Knight being too old. He's looked upon as being too old for any kind of push. Hey, listen, he's the same age as Damian Priest.
Yeah, I know.
They're the exact same age.
There we go.
Yeah. Let's take a look at what else we have here. Becky Lynch versus Trish Stratus.
Next,
which is
keep going.
That's going to be Becky's going to win. You know.
Yeah, that's the final draw on that star. It's just, and I got nothing against it, but that doesn't captivate me. As a fan, it's not pulling my interest the way I think they'd hope.
Same here.
Roman Reigns versus his cousin Jey Uso for the undisputed WWE Universal Championship.
Roman Reigns wins.
He's not going to. Yeah, that's not right. Now, who's going to take this one?
The key in that whole thing, though, is how that story keeps going from there. Is there going to be a new Uso to enter the family? Is that what you're about to see? Are you going to be setting up the old school Survivor Series where it's 5-on-5? Because there's plenty of them sons of bitches running around out there.
Yes, there are.
There's a Uso in every corner. There's one in every corner, I'm telling you. I opened my closet the other day. One of them fell out. I was like, what the hell are you doing here?
Which Uso are you?
Yeah, I was like, which one are you, man?
I'm Bobby Uso.
Hey.
Yeah. My name's Victor. I'm the half cousin.
Victor Uso. Yes. There's Jacob Fatu, who works for MLW.
Yeah.
He's no longer the champ over there. He's called, he's called the Werewolf. Jacob the Werewolf Fatu. Wild man.
I've been hoping he comes over soon, so we'll see.
Hopefully. I don't know what his contractual status is with MLW, but that'd be fantastic. Women's Championship.
No.
For the SmackDown belt. Asuka, Belair, or Flair?
Don't even care. Just
don't even care?
Yep.
Don't even care.
Do you see Io Sky cashing in on somebody here in the mix?
That would be the one she'd cash in on, but I think they're saving that for like a Royal Rumble type deal.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe. I mean, it would make a lot of sense here. Have her come running in. Everybody's beat to hell. The winner just barely won. I'm cashing in. Pull a Seth Rollins.
If Asuka doesn't win, and they have Io Sky try to cash in on Asuka and fail, you could do a series of matches, which would be the best of Japanese women's wrestling you would see in the United States in many, many years.
Yeah,
Asuka versus Io Sky, where they can both cut loose and show everybody what they can do. And then guys like who will remain nameless that we know from Twitter will be pulling the head off of that thing as they watch as they watch Asuka and Io Sky battle it out.
Rubbing one out. You guys, some of you cats on Twitter, man, you're way too obsessed with women's wrestling. It's freaking creepy, man. It's creepy, dude.
Lord.
Brothers, take us home. The shades are on.
I'm out.
Folks, it's been a great show. We'd like to thank the great Guy Evans for taking time out. And Guy, if you're watching this,
it went to shit, pal.
You're when you left, it all went downhill. It all went downhill rapidly. But I will say, if you're down in Tampa, shoot over to St. Petersburg and see the mayor of the coast of St. Petersburg, a man named Coach Bald. He'll take you down to St. Pete's Rejuvenate, and you'll get a new lease on life. You'll change your mood. You'll heal your body and your spirit. We like to, I forgot to put the crawl up here. Oh, my Lord in heaven. I forgot to put the crawl up here. You got to take a pause for the cause, folks. stpeterejuvenate.com. Go to that. If you're in the St. Petersburg area, they can do a lot for you. Cultivate Wellness for all your CBD and THC needs. They operate out of Georgia. They operate out of Virginia. Go to their website, cultivatewellness.com, and they will ship directly to your house. And if you buy a certain amount, it's free. They have coupon codes, cultivatewellness.com. It's all good for what ails you, folks. With St. Pete Rejuvenate and Cultivate Wellness. Motor, the future's so bright for the SCM Squared Circle Maniacs podcast, you gotta wear shades.
That's right. Peace out to all the SCM brothers.
Motor, I gotta ask you, with all that the decor of that room that you're in, is that a garage? Is that adjacent to your house? Is that a man cave that you constructed?
That's his man cave.
This is my man cave. All my music stuff and memorabilia crap that I've held on to since I was 14 is in this room.
Right. Looks good.
I got a couple of homeless people living in here a few months ago. I hadn't painted them. Man.
Good Lord.
Were they an Uso family member?
Hey, look. He opened a door when they were
Uso family members, man.
There was 9 Usos there. Yeah, there was Sleepy Uso, Dopey Uso, Doc Uso. Grumpy Uso, they were all there.
That's right.
You can find Motorhead711 on Twitter. If you want to join the Squared Circle Maniacs, we are somewhat of a club. It's hard to get into, but at Motorhead711 on Twitter, he's the man to talk to. Down below us, right here, I thought you fell out. I thought you were stroking out from all that energy you were expending.
No, God no.
Dancing Don Wayne at Bust a Move on Twitter. He is the mouth of the Virginia South, Don Wayne. And do not mess with Don Wayne. AEW fans, don't come at Don Wayne half-cocked, because Don Wayne he'll set you straight on the Twitter machine. My name is Johnny Bottles. I'm at Johnny Bottles on Twitter. Just search for SCM, the hashtag SCM. You'll find us somewhere. I'd like to give a shout out to Jason, Larry,
Larry,
Jimmy C81. He's not a member of the SCM, but Jimmy C81. He always brings a smile to our faces with his pictures of wrestling divas that he posts, and with the utmost horniness, I may say. And, Jimmy, we love you. I'm just joking around. We love you, pal. You know that. You know we've got a soft spot in our hearts for you and all your posts. Beer Man at Cleaning Towels on Twitter. If you haven't checked out the Beer Man's Twitter feed,
it's wild.
It's a cornucopia of drunkenness and bitter commentary on today's society. Love the Beer Man. He's a fantastic. A lot of hookers.
All right, brothers.
All right, that's it.
All right, I think we're out of here, guys. Peace out, and we'll see you next time. Next Sunday at 5. What was it, 4 or is it 6?
4.
4 o'clock. I can never remember. I'm so excited I actually forgot the time slot. Sundays at 4 p.m., folks. You'll find us on YouTube. You'll find us on Facebook. You'll find us on the Twitter machine. And I would like to say, if you like what you saw here, give us a thumbs up. It helps with the YouTube algorithm for people to find us. The more thumbs up, the better. And just make sure the thumb goes up and nowhere else. And subscribe to Totem Pole Nation. We're 102,000 subscribers, going strong. We can always use a lot more. And subscribe. It can't hurt. Check out the content. We have Life Lessons in the Morning, which is a little something to get you pumped up, a little something for you to think about while you're sipping your coffee or when you're riding to work. Listen to it in the car if you like. It's only a half hour to maybe an hour. And then we have various football coaches from around the country, collegiate, high school, professional. They all drop in. Coach Troy Taylor does a fantastic job of interrogating these guys, picking their brains for the mindset of their coaching techniques and skills and all that, and finding out where various coaches came from, what they've done, and where they're headed. Check out Mr. Lucky, and you cannot forget Lambo's World of Sports. Lambo is doing the Lord's work.
Shit.
What was that, Doc?
I just lost power, man. I got to go.
Oh, crud.
Yep. Time's up, Bottles. I got to go.
All right.
I might lose internet in a minute.
We are out. Peace out, everybody.